Hello, my name is John Burns, and I'm here to talk about using ProjectFirma, using the RCD project tracker as the ProjectFirma implementation for this demonstration. I'm going to first show how to log into the system. You can use the login button up here. I already have an account in the system, but if you're a new user, you can use the request account button on the left. Now we wait a moment while the system logs me in. Now we can see the system recognizes myself as John Burns. Now that I'm a logged in user, I have access to this Add Project button and the Update Project button. If you're a new user in the system, you might need to request privileges to add projects into the system. To do that, you can use the Request Support option on the Help menu here. And there's a handy option here, request permission to add projects. New users in the system need to have an administrator authorize them before they can add a project. So once you're in the system with your account and signed in as a user with permissions to add projects, you'll see the Add Project button. When I click that button, I'm asked, am I interested in entering a proposal for a future project? This might be a concept or a planning process where you're vetting projects for inclusion in the system, or you may be entering a historic project that's already underway or already complete. For the example today, I'll walk through adding an existing project that's already underway or complete. The process to add a proposal is very similar. So click Continue, and now I've started the project creation workflow. There's some simple instructions that tell me how to get started here, but I'm just going to move forward. So clicking the Enter Historic Project button, I'm now asked several questions on this Basics panel. You'll see there are several steps that we're going to have to walk through to get a complete project record, starting with the basics. The first question asks us to choose a primary resource area. Using this drop-down, we can search for the resource area that we want to associate our project with. For an example today, we'll create an urban residential stormwater management project. Let's type in our project name, project description. Then we'll choose the stage. And in this example, we're entering a project that was already completed. For the primary contact, by default, the system will use your organization's primary contact as the primary contact for the project. In this case, for the purposes of this demonstration, I've associated my own account with the Goldridge RCD, and Brittany Jensen is the primary contact for Goldridge RCD. If you wish, you can override the primary contact with another individual. And for the purposes of the example, I'll make myself the primary contact for the project that I'm entering. We'll choose the project type, which could be a one-off funding or an ongoing multi-year project. And then we can put in the cost of the project. Since this is a completed project, we'll say that this one was started in 2016, the planning design. Implementation was started in 2017, and then the project was completed this year in 2018. The simple location tells us the general area where this project is implemented. To enter the simple location, I'm going to zoom in. I hold the Shift key and click to drag to zoom in on the map. I'll say we're in the city of San Geronimo, so I'll plop a point on the map there. You can enter a description of the simple location and then save and continue. And now I'll have the opportunity to draw a more detailed location. The simple location is used in the system when we're plotting many projects, so you can get a sense of where projects are distributed throughout your watershed, county, city, or state. The detailed location is used on the project fact sheet, where we want to have a greater understanding of the specifics of a project. So I'll zoom in to a very high level here, and I'll start drawing the detailed location of my project. The detailed location might include the specific basins that were installed on a property. And so I can use the tools on the left here to draw a polygon showing where, in this case, a rain garden was installed. And this project, in our example, will include several different rain gardens that we might want to draw in. Once I've drawn the locations of my rain gardens, I can add a node to each one. If your project has detailed GIS information created in an external program such as ArcGIS, rather than hand drawing your project's detailed location, you can use this functionality to upload a GIS file. I won't get into the details of that during this training session, but if you were to follow this process, you'll find some detailed instructions on how to import GIS data rather than hand drawing your project's detailed location. Now moving on to the next section. We're now asked to specify the watershed or multiple watersheds that influence this project. In this case, we have the initial watershed that contains the project's simple location and detailed rain garden drawings. But in our example, these rain gardens flow downstream to another watershed. So we're going to see some positive water quality benefits in an additional neighboring watershed. So we'll go ahead and select both the primary watershed, San Geronimo Creek, and an adjacent watershed. Next, the system asks me which organizations have helped participate in this project. I'm first asked who is the RCD who would be primarily responsible for the implementation of the project. Then asked who the lead implementing organization might be. This could be the same as the associated RCD for the project, or it might be implemented by another organization. In this case, let's say that the Friends of the Napa River are the lead implementer. And then we would be asked to choose the state assembly voting district and the state senate voting district that are associated with this project, any agencies who contributed funding to the project, and we're able to search in this dropdown and find any number of agencies who have provided funding. Any agencies who may not be the lead implementer, but who have also partnered in the implementation of this project. And finally, there's an opportunity to add stakeholders who could be organizations that are not responsible for participating in the implementation, but who should be informed of the project's expenditures and status throughout the project's life cycle. We can add any number of stakeholders to the project. And then we'll move on to the next section. This section of the project create workflow is most relevant for projects that are early in their life cycle, projects that are proposals or planning design or where the implementation is underway. Using this section, we would enter a number of performance measures that we expect this project to accomplish. Because I'm entering a record for a project that's already completed, I'll choose to not enter the anticipated accomplishments and save myself some data entry. Because the project example that I'm entering here is for a completed project, it's especially important that we capture a complete record of the accomplishments for this project. Using the performance measures dropdown, I can search for the relevant list of performance measures. In this example, let's assume that these rain gardens will be reducing nitrogen. We have some options on this performance measure that we must choose. A system administrator has defined these performance measures with the available options. If you're not finding the right performance measure or the right options, you'll want to consult with one of the system administrators to revise the list of performance measures and options. But for this example, let's assume we're reducing some nitrogen. We'll reduce some phosphorus via these rain gardens, also in the year 2018. For projects that take place over multiple years, you would be able to enter the accomplishments on any given year. And lastly, we'll search for some water conservation that occurred again in 2018. Water storage in the groundwater. Let's make this a residential. We'll say that these rain gardens have produced 1 acre-feet of water. So once you've entered your complete record of performance measure accomplishments for the projects, we'll save and continue on to the next section. Now, as you can see, the system will tell you if you have not entered the complete set of data that it's expecting. Now, because this project, when we entered in the basics, was underway in 2017, the system thinks that I should be entering some performance measures for the year 2017. Now, there's a way around this. What we'll say is, what if the project has no accomplishments to report? So the system thinks I should have something to report for 2017 because the project was underway, but all we have to do in this case is provide a simple note that says the project is under construction in 2017, no accomplishments. So that'll allow us to move forward. So I'm actually kind of glad to have this minor hiccup in the example, because this probably reflects how most of you are going to experience the system. That through trial and error, you'll understand what is required for a complete record. And generally, there's no way to fail. Sometimes the system will tell you that it needed more than what you initially provided. But just in most cases, the error messages, the validation warnings will be fairly self-explanatory and should allow you to adapt and move forward. Now, next, we're asked to enter the expected funding sources for this project. This is another section that's more relevant for a project in the planning, design, or implementation phase. For a project that's already completed, we don't necessarily need to talk about where we expect to find funding. Instead, we're going to be asked to look backwards at what did we actually spend. So for this example, I'll just move beyond the expected funding section and choose not to enter that. If you are entering a project in the planning design phase, it's very important to enter the expected funding sources. This section can be used to help prepare grant submittals or project funding requests. But because this is a completed project, we'll move on. Now, to enter a project's expenditures for a completed project, we expect to have a complete accounting of everything that was spent on this project. On the basics section, we entered the estimated total cost of the project as $500,000. Because this is a completed project and we have a complete accounting of what was spent on the project, we'll be entering $500,000 worth of expenditures. This is a chance to cross-reference the individual funding sources for your project to the amount that was entered on the basics page. If by chance, as you're entering your specific funding sources for this project, you find that you need to revise the estimated total cost from the basics section, you can feel free to hop back in the workflow and change numbers as needed to ensure a complete and comprehensive expenditure record. So we can go through and find the funding sources that are available in the system. If by some chance a funding source for your project is not yet available in this list, you'll simply need to contact a system administrator who can add a new funding source for you. So once you've found the funding sources for this project, we'll add them to the project record. And here we'll type in some funding sources from the California State Water Board. The system requires a record per year for the individual funding sources. Through and add a second funding source that contributed to this project. Then we can see, once I have populated all of these fields for the two funding sources on this project, we see that the total amount of $500,000 matches what we entered on the basics page. This looks like a complete and comprehensive record of expenditures for the project. So now we'll move on. On the next page, I'm asked to choose the project themes for this project. The project themes is a chance to capture the multi-benefit nature of this particular project, where we can say that the rain gardens contribute to increasing the biological carbon sequestration or reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So we might say vegetation in the rain gardens captures CO2. And perhaps there's a public education component, the signage on the rain gardens. And then lastly, let's take some groundwater and some healthy watershed benefits. Next, we'll move on to the photos section. On this section, you can add any number of photos to the project. I'll find an example photo here. We're asked to provide a caption for the photo, credit, and note whether the photo was taken before, during, or after the project implementation. This is a chance to tell the story of your project. It's a great opportunity to include some before photos showing the pre-project conditions, what it looked like during construction, and then the final result. You do have the opportunity to set a photo as excluded from the project fact sheet. The project fact sheet is a chance to showcase the best of your project, and you might, for example, choose to exclude some of the under construction photos if that's not what you want to highlight during a project fact sheet. So that's an option that you can choose for any of your photos. For this example, I'll add a single photo and we'll move on. Lastly, onto the final section of the workflow. This is an opportunity to enter any notes on the project. Here we'll capture an opportunity to just provide any additional project details that didn't fit into the other sections. Notes are optional, so you can feel free to skip this section if you don't have anything relevant to answer. Now that we've completed the project workflow, we'll notice that we have check marks on all of the required sections, letting us know that we've completed the required information, and any sections that weren't required but were optional don't have a check mark. So now we're done with our project entry and we're able to submit. When we click the submit button, the system warns me that this is going to send a notification to the reviewers. The reviewers will be the steward of your RCD or the project administrators who will look at your project record and confirm that it's complete and has everything needed for entry into the RCD project tracker. So let's go ahead and do that. Voila, the project was successfully submitted for review and is in the system. An administrator will later return to the system and review this project and bring it in as a complete record. Thank you for listening to this training session for the RCD Project Tracker and ProjectFirma.